BreeLyn Dupertuis came down with a severe case of dengue fever in early November. It took the 37-year-old Honaunau resident over a month to feel better and to resume her studies to become a massage therapist. BreeLyn has farmed land in South Kona for 10 years where she was bitten every day by mosquitoes. She was also exposed to mosquito bites at one of her vacation rental cleaning jobs in Ho'okena. Ho'okena is the beach community where several of the dengue cases in the current Big Island outbreak were first discovered. BreeLyn and her mother tell a story of their frightening experience with dengue fever.
I believe that I was bitten with the mosquito carrying the infection on November 1st of this year. And the fever spiked on November 8th in the evening. I had been checking it because my coworkers, where I contracted it, also had it before I did. So I was checking my fever regularly, even that morning, to see if I had dodged the bullet. And I was fine all week, all 8 days. And it was about 5 p.m. on the 8th day that my fever went from 0 to 104 in a couple of hours.
What were your first symptoms?
My first symptoms, the night before my fever spiked, I noticed that I usually have a pretty healthy appetite, and I noticed that I didn't. I was not able to eat. I was not hungry. I was a little achy and tired, but I'm a hard worker, so that's not unheard of. But when the fever hit, I noticed my brain thought process was going a little bit weird, and I knew something was off. And then I couldn't move instantly. I could barely walk. And then quickly after that, I had a headache that is unparalleled. I've never felt anything like it, the headache, and just barely being able to walk or open my eyes. And that was all within the first 5 hours of the fever.
Then, after the first symptoms, what happened?
After the first symptoms, I'd never experienced such a high fever. It was the middle of the night. I was really nervous, to say the least. I was trying to Google, but I couldn't open my eyes, what was a dangerous place, or if I needed to call an ambulance or a friend to take me in. I concluded that if I could get my fever down, I could probably wait till the morning. So I literally covered myself in everything from my freezer and got my fever down to 102, and I thought that that was safe enough. And in the morning, a friend took me to the emergency room. I was already a little bit delirious and in a lot of pain.
And then how did they treat you at the emergency?
They did every test under the sun to see what it might be. I was there all day, and they concluded before the test results were in that I probably had dengue fever, because everything else had come up negative and I was showing all the signs for it. It was, in the hospital, I had 103 plus fever, and I was in an incredible amount of pain, and I was really flush. That was the first thing that happened. They noticed that I was really red. It wasn't quite a rash yet, but I would flush up my face, and then it would go away, and then I would flush again. That's what they said that they saw.
I got a call from her in the morning after she had been sick all night.
And describe to me how she looked and acted.
She was already not very coherent, so it was very worrisome, and her friend took her to the emergency room, and by the time I got there, she was already in a lot of pain.
It's the most pain I've ever experienced. Mostly the head. The headache was by far the worst thing. It was sort of like a caffeine headache, if anyone knows that, but, times 100. But it was that same kind of overwhelming pain. The joint pain was second to that and was also really high. But my headache was the first incredible sign of pain.
Well, I was really anxious to get her home because she was so uncomfortable in the emergency room. So as soon as she got home in her familiar surroundings, we just made sure that she was in bed, resting, and the most important thing was to keep her hydrated. And my friend's husband had had the fever, and she's a nurse, and so she warned me. She said, don't believe them if they say they're drinking water. So I would literally stand over her hour after hour and make sure she was drinking, because she just wasn't coherent enough to be responsive. She really needed somebody there at that point.
In the beginning, I just felt it like pinpoints, especially in my hips, in my joints. There was just very sharp, consistent pulsing pain in my joints. But what happened even 2 weeks after the fever had broken, I was feeling increased pain from my joints down into my bones, and it almost felt like it was twisting from every joint. So I wonder if that's why they call it breakbone, because it did feel like something like pressure was twisting at my bones, that it did feel like they were breaking.
So I was there to keep her hydrated, to keep her comfortable, and the night times were really the most difficult, because the fever would spike. If I fell asleep or she fell asleep, we would wake up kind of in a traumatic state, because she would be afraid and in so much pain. And so there were just days of no sleeping and kind of even dreading the nights, because in the daytime, in the afternoon, she might start to feel a little bit better, and then there was always this illusion that things were going to get better from there, and then they would get worse. And that was really very difficult.
I think that the body rash from dengue was there all along. I don't think I noticed it until after my fever had subsided, because all I could feel during the fever was that delirium and that pain. And honestly, I didn't really even open my eyes during the fever as much as possible, because everything was painful, and opening my eyes included. When I did open my eyes, I looked down at my body and saw the rash, and I wasn't sure if I was delirious or if I was making it up, but my feet were really swollen up and red. I mean, it was like a tingly, burning pain, irritation. Not itchy like an allergy, but just all around discomfort.
And did it cover you from head to toe?
It was only little speckles of it on my face, I noticed. It definitely, my hands and feet were swollen extremely, and then my appendages, my belly, and my legs. I felt a little bit silly even taking pictures of the rash at the time, but I was fascinated by it, and I thought, knowing myself, that when it was all said and done, I would want to look back and see what it looked like and see if that was really happening. My hands and feet didn't start peeling until 3.5 weeks after my fever had broken. So I was 4 weeks after having shown symptoms. I noticed something strange in my hands, and I wasn't sure what it was. I thought maybe I had touched the stove or something, and it began peeling off because it was such a deep peel. And over the next 2-3 weeks, they continued to peel no matter how much I tried to slough off the skin. And then my feet started to peel in that same fashion, and they're still peeling, and it's 6 weeks, 7 weeks later. I heard in some countries they call dengue fever boo-boo fever because there's a depression associated with it, and I am hearing this from other people that have had it. And I think I had about a week that maybe it was depression. I called it anger or frustration, because I'm not better yet, to be honest. I'm a little bit better every day. I have a little bit more energy every day. I have a little bit less pain every day. But every time that I think I'm better and I try to behave normally, I'm not, and I'm 6 weeks later right now. I hear that it'll be 2 months. I'm hoping in another week I'll be totally better. I've been hoping that for a long time. I am talking to other people that had it before I had it, and they're saying the same thing, that they wish that they were better, more better. they think they're better, and then they have another hard day where they know it's not normal. I look forward to answering the question and saying, I'm totally better.
Without being specific, where do you think you got it?
I believe that I was in the ground zero area of Ho'okena, near Ho'okena Beach. I was working down there, and there was a lot of people getting it. There was a lot of people were getting sick, I should say, and there was a lot of discussion those weeks of, oh, everybody's getting so sick, but we hadn't quite yet gotten the first positive test result of dengue fever. People were calling it all different things. I heard someone get diagnosed with hand and foot disease that was clearly dengue that we know now. A lot of people were getting it, and it wasn't until, I think it was 4 days after I got sick, that I heard that Ho'okena Beach Park was closed down. So I think I am an example of right there in the height of what was happening before we really knew what was happening.
So you had a house cleaning job at that location, right? And you were with a crew that several people in the crew got sick?
Every single person in the original crew got sick, yeah.
And you were a crew of 4?
Yes.
Crew of 4.
Yeah, everybody has been tested positive with dengue fever. I was the last one to get it. One of the things that a lot of people don't talk about with dengue fever is the economic impact, not just for me personally and for my family personally, but for other people because of how it takes you out of the workforce. A lot of people are not able to work. I still am not able to work at my full capacity almost 2 months later. My mother took over a week off of work. Her husband took at least 2 days off of work to take care of her, taking care of me. It ripples down from there.
Were you afraid of becoming ill too?
There is that fear. And again, with all the stories, we're trying to track when is the mosquito able to transmit the disease. And, just like I said, starting out feeling kind of confident, like if I avoided certain times or certain places or made sure she wasn't bit, that everything would be okay. But as the days went on and we got more and more tired, it was frightening. We like to joke that we became like crazy women if a mosquito showed up in the realm, and me trying to make sure she didn't get bit and that I didn't, and it just became a little bit chaotic. Yeah, and when you see somebody go through that kind of pain and suffering, it's just so on your heart to not want anybody else to have to suffer like that, and to really not be clear about the time frame and when it could be transmuted to another person was very stressful, And my husband came and he did spray the farm, and we were doing everything that we could possibly do, and that was comforting, just to know that whatever we could think of to do that would be protective or would be healing or would be preventative, we felt like we were really doing.
Was traumatizing for my loved ones, for the people around me, for my friends and family who were really concerned about me, and that really took a toll on them for such a long period of time. I have a friend whose 5-year-old son had dengue fever, and I'll never forget when she told me, and the look in her eyes as she expressed to me what it was like for her to see her baby have that high of a fever for so long with no relief. I can't imagine mothers or fathers, parents with young children, and what that must be like to watch them go through it.
Of course, there's a lot of fear involved. Not really having seen this kind of illness before, it was really the worst illness I've ever seen. The pain was so seemingly unbearable, and just the consistency and the length of time that we were in it, our resources got really worn down. And so it was traumatic because my normal coping as the days went by was just not available to me. And hearing all kinds of rumors about the disease and not really knowing exactly what was fact, looking for certain symptoms, being afraid that one symptom meant that she needed to be hospitalized or that it could actually be fatal. That was extremely traumatic.
So you were worried that she might not make it?
There was that worry. And I know that she's really strong and, you know, she's very health conscious. But I also knew that at that period of her life, she was pretty worn down from working a lot of hours.
The whole thing freaked me out. The dengue fever, I'm still freaked out. It's 6 weeks later, and I'm still freaked out. When I talk to other people that have had dengue fever, we are all freaked out that have had extreme symptoms. It was just a really shocking and traumatic experience, the whole thing, because it affects your body and your capabilities. It affects your mind, the fever, the pain, the way that it moves and travels. The whole thing is shocking. And I'm still just coming to terms with what exactly just happened.